Good morning and welcome to the Daily Tanya. Today is Thursday, the 10th day of Nisan, which means tonight is the 11th day of Nisan. Yud Aleph Nisan is the birthday of the Rebbe, the 122nd birthday. And we'll have a Farbrengen tonight. You're welcome to join us. And today we begin chapter 41, very fundamental chapter. It talks about accepting God as King, the fear of Hashem, the importance of that. And let's begin with tzedakah. Gedola tzedakah, shemekareves es hageula. Tzedakah brings Mashiach closer. So, when we're talking about fear of Hashem, sometimes I get the reaction, people they're kind of allergic to that thought. Fear of Hashem, I want to serve God because I love Hashem. Why is that the need to fear Hashem? And of course, some people get discouraged when they say, "Oh, we have to fear Hashem." God, they picture God as something frightening, but of course, that is a misunderstanding of what fear means. The fear of Hashem. What the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about the greatness of Hashem, and just yesterday I gave out matzahs for Pesach. And I was talking to one individual, and he tells me he remembers he came to the Rebbe, and he was a child. And he says when he came to the Rebbe, he felt fear, like he was trembling. And I remember that too. When standing in front of a tzaddik, of a holy man, you have a sense of awe, a sense of fear. So what kind of fear is that? Are you afraid that he's going to hit you, he's going to do something bad to you? Of course not. We're talking about fear, talking about the great reverence of standing in front of a holy man. And this is what we're talking about when we say about the fear of Hashem. So it is important to bring yourself in the beginning of the day, every day, to have a little sense of that awe and reverence of Hashem. And Alter Rebbe is going to explain. It says, of course, we mentioned earlier in the Tanya, we need to have the feeling of love of Hashem. Love leads us to do the positive mitzvahs. Fear leads us to avoid doing prohibitions. But the Alter Rebbe says, even when it comes to positive mitzvah, when you're going to put on tefillin, when you give tzedakah, when you light the Shabbos candle, or any mitzvah you do, it is not enough to do it just because I love Hashem. Even then, you have to stop and feel the fear of Hashem. And in essence, really, this is a beginning in the Shulchan Aruch. It says, Shivisi Hashem lanegdi samid. You should always have in front of you Hashem. God should always be in front of you. When you go to sleep, when you wake up, it says when you lie in your bed. Picture, says in Shulchan Aruch, picture that a king is standing right in front of you. Are you going to behave the same way as when nobody's there? Obviously not. When you know a king is standing in front of you, your behavior, the way you talk, the way you dress, the way you move, the way you see, what you look at, it's all different. Because you know the king is right there next to you. And that is the idea, to have the king accepting Hashem's kingship, even before we do the positive mitzvah. And Alter Rebbe is going to explain this in more details in this chapter. So let's begin inside chapter 41. Says the Alter Rebbe, Bram, tzorich liyos lezikorin tomid reishis ha'avoda ve'ikar v'sharosha. One must, however, constantly bear in mind what is the beginning of divine service as well as its core and root. V'hu ki'af she'ayira yishirish l'sur mira ve'ahava levasei tov. This means, although fear is the root of turn away from evil, and love is the root of do good. When you fear something, you don't go against it. And when you love something or someone, you're doing the positive thing. in doing good things. Nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, Afal Pikein, Loi dai le'oire ra'av levada levasei tov. Nevertheless, it is not sufficient to awaken the love alone to do good. Even for doing good, it's not enough to have the love alone. You need to first, at least, to awaken the minimal fear, the natural fear that we have in our heart. What does it mean? There is fear that we can awaken the awe of Hashem out of contemplating the greatness of Hashem, which leads us to have the real true fear. But if you don't do this, if you're not capable of doing this, at least you're able to awaken the innate fear that we have in us. We have in us the innate fear that knowing that Hashem is here, the natural fear that we have. ולפוך צריך להאיר את חילו העיר הטיביס המסותרס בלב כל ישראל, שלא לימרד במלך מלכי המלוכים הקודש ברוך הוא כנזכה לאל. But at the very least, before performing the positive command, one must first arouse the innate fear which lies hidden in the heart of every Jew, not to rebel against the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, as has been stated above. And it says, "Shetehei b'izgalus liboy aymoiche al kapanim," so that this fear should manifest itself in his heart, or at least in his mind. In other words, as we mentioned in the earlier chapters, you can develop a fear and love of Hashem in your heart that it's a palpable feeling of love and fear of Hashem. But not everybody is capable of reaching that point. But at least you can reach a point of having a strong conviction in your mind that this is the great King. This is Hashem. And as the Alter Rebbe is going to explain. So at least in your mind you should have it. If you're not capable to bring it to revelation in your heart, an actual feeling, you at least are capable to bring it into your mind, that you really truly understand that and you have such a conviction that this is the right thing. As the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain. Dehainu, this means, Leizboinen b'machshavtoi al kol panim, gedulas ein soif baruch hu u'malchusay. This means that in order to arouse within himself the latter category of fear, the natural fear, he should at least contemplate in his mind the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof and his kingship. So to arouse the former category of fear, that which is palpably felt in the heart, one must engage one's das. Das means the understanding, the connection, in profound meditation. He who is unable to do so should contemplate at least superficially God's greatness. And what is it that you should contemplate? Says the Alter Rebbe. Asheri malchus kol leilamim elyonim v'tachtonim. That God's kingship, which extends to whole worlds, both higher and lower. Bearing in mind that the greater the king's dominion, the more awe it inspires in his subjects. When you're talking about a king of a little town, a little village, or a tiny country, it doesn't bring such awe as when you're talking about a king of a superpower. And when you're talking about the king of all kings, God, he's the king of the higher world and the lower worlds, the spiritual and the physical. And let him further consider that he fills all worlds, Hashem fills all worlds. What does it mean? He's animating them with an indwelling life force that created being can experience and comprehend. And also v'sevev kol almin, he also encompasses all worlds, meaning he also animates them with a life force that transcends the experience and comprehension of created beings. As it is written, do I not fill heavens and earth? Hashem fills everything. Hashem is in us, in inside and encompassing us at the same time. And yet, Hashem, so to speak, puts aside all of the higher spiritual worlds and the lower worlds, the higher creation, the lower creation. That's not important. What is important to Hashem? He makes himself king over us and over every single individual Jew. Says the Alter Rebbe, yet he lives aside the creatures of the higher world and the creatures of the lower worlds. Neither the higher nor the lower creatures represents the Creator's ultimate intention. He therefore does not bestow his kingship upon them, so that he be called their king and their God and king. Rather, where does Hashem put his kingship over? Is over the people of Israel. Umeyached malchusei al amo Yisrael bechlal ve'olav bifrat. He uniquely bestows his kingship upon his people Israel in general, for God is known as the King of Israel, and upon him in particular. For a man is obligated to say, for my sake was the world created. What does that mean? That a person needs to realize, a man, a woman, everybody, needs to realize that Hashem placed me here because there is some mission that I need to fulfill, and without me, that mission cannot be fulfilled. Bishvili nivra olam, the world as a whole was created for me. I have my unique mission, and therefore Hashem becomes my king individually. So when you think about this, that Hashem, the great master of the universe and God of all kings, he drops everything, he puts everything aside. What does he care for? To become our king. And therefore, in turn, we must accept also God as king upon us. V'hu gam hu mekabel olav malchusay liyes melech olav ula'avdoi ve'lases retzoyne b'chol minei avodas evet. And he, for his part, accepts his kingship upon himself, that he be king over him, to serve him, and to do his will in all kinds of servile work. So this acceptance of the yoke of the divine service is required of all Jews. So that is step number one. Step number one is to take upon ourselves as God as king. And in fact, the Rebbe encouraged everyone to memorize this first part of this chapter. A few more lines later that we're going to read tomorrow. We should memorize it, and we should know it by heart, and to think this chapter every time, every day. Because this is such a fundamental thing. When you're accepting Hashem as king, the life changes. So it's not like, okay, I love Hashem, I know that I'm going to do the right thing, but I have my life, I live my life, a free life, whatever I do, whatever I want. But then when it comes to certain things, I say, okay, wait a second, is this okay, this not okay? Does God want me to do it? Does God doesn't want me to do it? That's a nice thing to do, but you know what? It's missing the point. When you realize that Hashem is everything, and you are completely subjugating yourself to Hashem and saying, I'm not my person. I am here for a mission. Hashem is my king. So just like a person who is a servant, obviously, today we don't have servants, or at least we shouldn't have servants. But back in the days when you have servants, slaves, that they had nothing of their own. Whatever they did, they were completely devoted to the master. when we're talking about doing so for Hashem, that's a positive thing that empowers us, that we are completely devoted to our Master, devoted to our King, and therefore everything else, it affects everything else what you do, the way you speak, the way you're not just freely speaking like with no limits and no filters. What you think, how you react to people, what you look at, all of those things, when you live your day, you're saying, I am a servant of Hashem. The King is standing right in front of me. My life is going to be godly. My day is going to be godly. So this is the end of today's shir. We'll continue with Hashem tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.